is the Constitution. Chapter 7, We the People. The long, hot months of summer passed away. By September, cool breezes blew over the Philadelphia rooftops. The important work on the Constitutional Convention was nearly done. For so long, delegates had been hard at work. Now they were restless to go home and rejoin their families. On September 8th, they handed over a draft of the Constitution to a committee of style. The committee's job was to polish the writing and put the whole thing together in a readable form. The committee chose Gouverneur Morris to write the final draft. Morris streamlined the Constitution into 7 articles or sections. He untangled confusing sentences and trimmed away unnecessary words. He also changed the very first sentence. The original draft began, "We, the people of the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island," and so on. It listed every state by name. The new opening simply read, "We, the people of the United States." By not naming each separate state, Morris signaled a dawn of new government, one that answered directly to the people. It was a brilliant touch. The rest of the introduction told why the Constitution was written. Today, the introduction is known as the preamble. After just 4 days, the committee delivered the final draft of the Constitution. Delegates changed a few details. Then the document was sent up to be engrossed on parchment, high-quality, thick paper. So this is Alexander Hamilton, one of the significant people in the founding. James Madison, we heard a lot about how he was a younger man at the time, but very influential. This is Roger Sherrin, who came up with the Great Compromise that was on the delegates. This is an actual picture. If you go down to Philadelphia, this is the room where the Constitution was developed and signed. Once the lockdown's done, it's definitely worth a trip down there. This is a replica seat. This is the seat of the rising sun. In the back, there's a picture of the sun, and that's right where George Washington would have sat during the convention. This is a portrait of Gouverneur Morris, that gentleman who helped rewrite it, make it very smooth. And this is the inauguration of George Washington when he became the first president. This is the members of the first cabinet of the United States with George Washington. So they had a very important job there. This is suffragists. Remember, they said that men had the right to vote. It was all men who represented. When the Constitution was first written, women didn't have the right to vote. That took a long, long time until 1920, so 100 years ago, when the 19th Amendment was put in. This was a first draft of the Bill of Rights. A lot of things we take for granted today were not included in the initial Constitution and had to be written in. And this is the preamble of the U.S. Constitution, etched on the wall of the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. And that is a really cool center if you get a chance to go down and visit. This is a very famous portrait depicting the 55 delegates to the Constitution Convention as they had their heated debate here. Benjamin Franklin's just sitting, relaxed. No, Franklin's over here, actually. So that, I believe, maybe was Goover and a couple of the others. Franklin's in there. Franklin, Thomas Jefferson was over in France at the time, remember. Here is the Capitol building. That's where we pass our laws. And this is a guard protecting a copy of the original Declaration of Independence and Constitution. It looks like he is a Marine by his uniform. Oh, and somebody in the Navy over there on duty protecting those documents. They're very important documents. On September 17th, 39 delegates gathered in the State House one last time. Some delegates had already been called home. 4 had left in protest. The framers lined up to sign the Constitution. Spread out in the front table, George Washington signed first. As Benjamin Franklin waited his turn, he gazed at a half-sun that was carved in the back of George Washington's chair. All summer long, Franklin had wondered if the sun was rising or setting. Now he said he knew the answer. It was a rising sun, he happily declared. The new day in America couldn't dawn just yet, however. The American people had to ratify the Constitution. Ratify means approve. Only then could it become the law of the land. Copies of the Constitution were sent out to all 13 states. Newspapers printed every word. Soon the nation was abuzz with talk about the government. Every class of people debated: frontiersmen, farmers, shopkeepers, landowners, and bankers. Citizens spoke their mind at town meetings and churches. They wrote editorials, pamphlets, and songs. Historians say it was the greatest outpouring of political thinking in Western history. Americans split into 2 groups, pro and con. Meanwhile, a series of articles in favor of the Constitution began showing up in New York papers. They were written under the pen name Publius. The mystery writer was really 3 people: Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. The 85 essays are now known as the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers calmed people's worries of an all-powerful government. They pointed out the safeguards planted in the Constitution, the system of checks and balances. If Congress passed bad laws, the president could veto them. If the president overstepped his powers, the Supreme Court could rule his acts unconstitutional and make him stop. One by one, states called special conventions to ratify the Constitution, or not. 9 of the 13 states had to approve the Constitution for it to become law. And on June 21st, it happened. New Hampshire became the 9th state to ratify the Constitution. 5 days later, Virginia, the largest state, ratified too. It is done. We have become a nation, declared Benjamin Rush, who had been a signer of the Declaration of Independence. America had a new government, one that is now almost 250 years old. The bold experiment worked. In time, all of the 13 colonies ratified the Constitution, even those that had voted no at first. Rhode Island, which had refused to send delegates to the Constitution, was the last to ratify on May 1790. July 4th was just 2 weeks away. The joyous city of Philadelphia got ready for a big-time celebration. On Independence Day, 1788, the first cannon fired at sunrise in Philadelphia. Thousands of people began pouring into the city centers to celebrate the brand new Constitution of the United States. By 9:30, a parade set off. A float with a towering blue eagle was followed by a giant framed Constitution. Next came 10 white horses pulling a fancy dome in 13 colonies, one for each state.